Today we're going to be looking at the multi-contact email functionality. Here on the screen, we're looking at a customer record inside of NetSuite, and the multi-contact email functionality is based pretty much purely on contact records, native NetSuite contact records. Within the contact record, we do have a handful of custom fields that we've created per emailable transaction types. So down here in the contact sublist, you'll be able to see that we have email purchase orders, estimates, sales orders, all the way through emailing statements and fulfillments. So each of those checkboxes, if I were to go into edit, is just assigned as a show and list custom checkbox on the contact entity record. And we have those nested under the communication tab here. So depending on which contacts you want to receive which types of emails, you'll be able to just simply check the checkboxes. Okay. Back on that customer record, we can see that different contacts are set up to receive different types of transactions, and we also have multiple contacts that potentially could receive the same transaction type. So for example, this first test contact is going to be receiving estimates, as will test contact 3. However, test contact 2 would not receive estimates, but would receive sales orders. Invoices is probably a more common scenario where you may have a sales order or an order acknowledgement going to one person that potentially is a buyer, but then you're going to email the invoices to an accounting or a payable clerk at that customer. So that's a very common occurrence where you're actually emailing different transactions to different contacts within one of your customers. Okay, so that's the general setup. This is supported obviously both on a vendor and a customer side. Vendors are going to primarily just have purchase orders as their email transaction type. Very rare for a customer to see that, but you could have a customer set up as a dual relationship vendor. So that's where that other relationships and the purchase orders could come into play. Variety of different spots on where we would actually be able to trigger the email. So starting with the base install, what comes kind of out of the box per se with the bundle is you're going to have a button present on various transactions, each one of those sale type transactions, and then the purchase orders. So if we were to actually go take a look at an existing sales order for ABC Company, let's actually organize this by sales order. Make it a little bit cleaner for us to find one. Take a look here. Keep this contact sublist open so that we can know which contact goes with which email address. So as that sales order loads for us, you will see that we actually have a button here called Email Contacts. So once a sales order is saved, the user would simply be able to push this Email Contacts button. That's just going to spin for a second here. It's going to go identify which contacts are the correct contacts to receive that specific email, and then send the email with our predefined email template. Email templates are configured using the native NetSuite email templates. So under our documents templates and email templates, those are fully configurable. There's some that come with the bundle. They're pretty basic, pretty vanilla, but those are some things that the LUXSolution consulting staff can work with you on to improve and make however you need it to. So there, that email just sent. We can come underneath the communication tab, and there you can see today's date, 8/4 at 5:49, just turned to 5:50 here on my clock. You can see that we emailed ckellogg@luxsolution.com and cwoo@luxsolution.com. So to refresh our memories, we were on our sales order, and here we see cwoo and ckellogg as the two contacts for sales orders, and they did indeed get that email. Now let's go take a look potentially at an invoice, see how that differs from our sales order. So if we open up an invoice, that's not, I'll go grab this newest invoice. We're going to have that exact same button present where a user would be able to save an invoice and then push the button to email the contacts. So here we'll go ahead and initiate that email. That again will spin once that identifies all the relevant contacts required for that invoice. It's going to attach that email just like native NetSuite under our communication tab. Now, there's a variety of different options for us to automatically send transaction emails upon save or upon approval. Out of the box or upon the initial bundle install, that is not included just because each customer may have different requirements and we didn't want to hard code that into the bundle itself. So we want to give each kind of organization that utilizes this tool as much flexibility as possible, but definitely very easy and possible for us to trigger those emails based on a variety of different event types. So there we go, went ahead and got that email. Here I can actually see, again, 84551, that we just emailed test@luxent.com and cwoo@luxent.com. So to refresh our memories one more time, relationships, look at our invoices. There I do see cwoo was included as an invoice, and then this test@luxent.com down here, test contact for, received it. If you remember, the sales order had C. Kellogg for the sales order. We did not see him receiving that here on the invoice. So it did what it was expected to do. It identified which contacts were the ones that needed that email and therefore kind of included them automatically. So not only do you get dynamic email addresses, which you don't get with native NetSuite. Native NetSuite only allows you to have the single email address, and that single email address is used for every single transaction type for this customer. With our functionality, you get multiple email addresses and dynamic default emails based on the transaction type that it's being emailed from. So two huge wins that native NetSuite just has a pretty large gap in. Moving on to some additional functionality, we included the statements as a way that we can generate certain emails. So emailing our statements is something that we would actually configure under this MCE, multi-contact email statements tab. If I jump down into edit here, we can identify some of the preferences just to kind of show you how these would align. Let me actually hop back into view mode. And we're going to go over here to generate a statement. And you'll notice that we have some native NetSuite fields on here. So start date, only show open transactions, whether it's a consolidated statement or not. Those are all native fields, and we're really just going to be passing some of the parameters from ABC company or whoever that customer is using some of the fields that we have defined down here. So whether we only want the open transactions, what that multi-contact email statement start days is, what the specific statement day of the month might be, whether that statement is going to be consolidated or not, the statement day of the week, not necessarily day of the month, and then the MCE from email. So the MCE statement day of the month or day of the week, those two fields are designed for running on a schedule so that a user doesn't have to actually go and on the first of the month or on the last day of the month determine which day we need to actually send these statements to which customers. It's going to handle that automatically for you. So simply by plugging in a day of the month, let's say they want to see their statement on the first of the month, most likely that'll be for the previous 30 days, if that's how we want it configured. So statement start days, 30 days here, and then who we actually want to be sending that email from. This is a list of employee records inside the system, so you can either have a generic employee record. Here you can see I have some kind of generic employee records. For example, you could have an AR or an accounts receivable at luxent.com be an employee record with a specific email address, and then that email can come from that address and that employee record, or you can have it come from a specific person. So I can just put myself in here. If you wanted those statements to actually be emailed on a weekly basis, you can plug in the day of the week, and if you hit your field help here, we should be able to actually see how those days get aligned. So if you want those emailed on Sunday, you'd enter a 1. If you want it emailed on Saturday, you'd enter a 7, or anything in between. You can leave that blank if you don't want it to be emailing on a weekly basis. Vice versa over here, if you didn't want to be emailing on a monthly basis, you would also leave this field blank. By filling in either the day of the month or the day of the week field value, that automatically sort of turns on the automated sending of those statements to this specific customer. Okay. If you didn't want to run that automation on a schedule, but instead you just wanted to generate an email of the statement, you can click on the email statement to contacts. One thing I think I noticed when I last opened the sublist was that we didn't have anyone identified to receive a statement. So let's maybe open up CWU, and we'll establish that he will receive an email statement in addition to some of his other transaction types. And then let's add one more here. We'll put that in as test contact 3 and identify them as a recipient of statements as well. All right, so once those are defined, as long as you have at least one, then we'll be able to email the statement to contacts. If we did not have anyone identified with the checkbox checked, the system will actually revert back to the native email address if that is set up in our general preferences. So there's a handful of additional preferences that are defined underneath our custom preferences. So for our multi-contact email functionality, there's a handful of general preferences that we see throughout the system. So what that statement email template would be, what the multi-contact email statement's default from email would be. If we didn't have that set up specifically on the customer, I could have left that blank. It would have defaulted to this user. Whether that multi-contact email statement includes the sales rep. So if we wanted to include whoever the identified or assigned sales rep was on that customer record on that emailed statement, we could do so here in the general preferences. And then whether we revert to a default email, that's what I was just mentioning. So if I didn't find any contacts that had email statements checked, do we want to revert back to the single and the default email here, the native NetSuite email field? So I have that set up as no, but those are dynamic preferences that just allow maximum flexibility per requirement per customer. So go ahead and hit our email the statement to contacts button. And there we go. And then here you can see that we just got that company statement, again, 8/4 at 5:59. You can see that on the customer record, we're also tracking all of those transactional emails. So you can see when we emailed that sales order earlier today, when we emailed the invoice, and now that we're emailing that statement. You can see E. Olguin and CWU at Luxon.com both received that statement, and that is exactly what we expected here with the email statements to that address and that address. So that's an overview of Luxon's multi-contact email statement or multi-contact email functionality that includes statement emails. All of these different transaction types are eligible, and all of this is available at the time that you install the bundle. So it's pretty much a plug-and-play bundle. We do traditionally work with you to design your email templates, especially if you have different templates per transaction type. And then there's a few different configuration options depending on when you actually want to have that trigger, if you want to email those contacts automatically versus pushing a button. Hope you enjoyed that overview, and look out for the next LUXSolution.